motion for regular board minutes, September 19th, 2022.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Yes. Mrs. Gill? Yes. Ms. Lipscomb? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Abstain.
Yes. Ms. Smith? Yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson? Yes. Mr. Mark?
Yes. Before we start public comments, I would just like to take a minute to mention, in Mr. Villano's absence, some questions might not be answered fully. We will give everybody a proper answer in a timely fashion. So please be patient with us. We will get everybody their proper answers. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to public comments for agenda items only. Yes.
Keith Stevens from Blackwood. I had a question on 6.6. The routes for bus drivers and the hours that they get paid. Is that we pay them by a shift pay and not per hour, actually?
So they get paid hourly. They do a route bidding in the summer. And so then that establishes which routes they're doing and what the hours would be. And then they do actually punch in and punch out and get paid according to the hours they work.
Okay, so it's not like a shift.
What's that?
It is salary broken down.
So what does this change then? Quarter of an hour, half an
A lot of times in the beginning of the year, Mr. Gibbons, we estimate how long a route will take. And then the first week of school, the first 2 weeks of school, the driver continues to come in and says, you know, I'm consistently a quarter hour over what the estimate was. And administration will watch and make sure that that's accurate. And then if so, they'll adjust that contract.
So it's for a budgeting purpose type of a thing?
It's what?
It's like a budgeting purpose type of thing to know this route is now taking longer than normal?
No, like, you might estimate that the route's gonna take 25 hours a week, but then the driver keeps coming in a quarter hour every day, longer than that 25 hours. So if we consistently see that, we will adjust that, so their pay will actually be adjusted, that's why it's on the agenda. So
Do we
in the
know
beginning of the year,
what's
it's
causing
budgeted.
those delays? Is it traffic in town? Is it, what are those delays?
It wouldn't be based on traffic delays, it would be based on the fact that that route really does, on a normal day, take longer than estimated.
So it's like fixing an original estimate, because you base it on an estimate at first, correct?
Yes.
And then if you adjust the estimates based on data when you get them?
Are we allowed to make comment to answer his question properly?
So what we'll do, so what you do is, Mr. Gibbons has the floor right now on agenda items.
We're all on the route. We can't do the route in the allotted time because there aren't enough drivers.
See, for instance, when
There are a lot of other.
So guys,
Hold on, guys.
yeah, so the comments are to the board. If you want to respond and it is an agenda item, once Mr. Gibbons doesn't have the floor anymore, somebody else can come up and make that comment as well. So just so we don't have the crosstalk, he gets his time and he gets his questions answered, and then there will be time for other people. So I apologize for cutting your time, Mr.
So, I
Gibbons.
just clarify, so there was a point in time that each of these routes took the lower amount of time, it's now taking the longer amount of time. And the factors are, there's not enough bus drivers.
No, I think
It was all estimated, correct?
then maybe the new routes.
And which people are you looking at? 6.6 what?
Jay, where there's route 10, 6 hours, now route 10, 7 hours.
Right, so it's taking longer to do that route. So they're getting an extra hour for the route.
And I'm asking, what's causing it to take longer?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's-
Excuse me, what we're gonna do is when Mr. Gibbons is done, whoever has a comment to his question, I'll move on to you next, okay? Thank you.
That's how it normally happens, and then Coyote would make the recommendation to the board to increase the route based on the amount of time it's taking to do that.
And we do have a driver shortage. So in some cases, these drivers are covering extra runs that might then add time to their day on a
It
regular
could be. I
basis.
don't know exactly how Lynn handles when we're doing doubles or triples even during the day. Because you have to be careful, sometimes it ends up just being extra time.
That was-
You know,
And when I was
punch.
talking about them punching out, that's what I was getting at, was if they go extra time for taking extra runs, they can get paid on a daily basis as
Normally,
well.
when we adjust the contract, it's because the original estimate done at root bidding is low, and we need to increase the contract time.
So it is an estimate that needs to be adjusted after a few rounds are ran. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please. Can you stand up, please?
If I answer his question, does that go into my 3 minutes at the end?
No, it's two separate public comments. This is public comment for agenda items, and it's so just, we just ask that you address the board.
Okay, so one.
That would be, that's us. You're talking to us.
I'm sorry. All right, so to answer his question, I don't, Mr. Gibbons, I believe you said, for instance, when we are given our routes, that is done as to when we pick children up, it has the timing, how long it takes. So this one he's speaking about, it originally had on there that you start at 6:30 in the morning, but your first pickup is at 6:40. So it's literally impossible. Once you clock in, you get there, you have to do a, what? Yeah, you have to do your inspection on your bus, which takes 8 minutes maybe longer. You have to check all your lights, you have to check your stop signs, you have to check the interior of the bus. You have to check everything with the bus, the mileage, the gas. Then once you do that, then you proceed to where the first stop is. So it's impossible to do something, checking the bus that takes you 8 to 10 minutes and to get to your first stop, which is 10 minutes on the sheet, which is what's given to you. So the fact is, for a month, we write down, yes, 15 minutes. I had to come in 15 minutes earlier. So I was able to do my complete check, make sure everything was okay, get my aid, and then proceed to get to the stop on time. Once we do it every day, where Lynn sees that, yes, it needs to make an adjustment, it's put on here so the board can acknowledge that adjustment, and then we can get paid for it, part of our salary, and not just written up on a pink slip, because what we make salary-wise, money isn't different, but it's different for contracted drivers because you get your pension through that. So now that that's going to be every day, that a dollar amount, that 15 minutes will go towards our pension. Whereas whatever we do on a pink slip, anything extra, we don't get a pension. For instance, if I'm given 2 runs and my first run is done at 9 o'clock, and then we need to do a second run, then I do my second run. However, it's long it takes me to do that second run, something like that, we write on our pink slip, because that doesn't get added to our contract, because every day is different. People are out sick, people don't come into work, there are different situations why it has to change and why it can't be done. So it's really important that you understand that. These things that we put in for it is time that we have to work that we aren't getting paid for, so it needs to be adjusted to our time.
Thank you for the
I'm
explanation.
sorry, can I just get your name again? I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name again, I'm sorry.
Barbara.
Barbara, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, is that all? Can I sit down?
Yeah, I missed your name in the beginning. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thank you for the help. Any other comments? Chip, go.
Chip Willis, 6th Bridge. Township. 6.4D. I don't know if he answered this question because he's not here, but I'm assuming it was Mr. Bilodeau at that meeting and not you, Mr. Tripp.
I was there.
You were there? So if we're putting it into the record that we met, are we putting the agenda in the record or just the fact that you met?
Just the fact that we met, which complies with the requirements that we have with the state of New Jersey as part of our agreement with local law enforcement.
Right, but shouldn't the public know what was discussed?
At a
Rather than
security
just we
briefing?
had a meeting?
At a security briefing?
That's what I don't know. Is it a security briefing or is it just a 12-18?
It would be, we go over various plans that the district has in part of our agreement between the Gloucester Township Police and the schools. So the principals are there as well as representatives from the Gloucester Township Police Department.
From that meeting, will changes take place in the district?
Possibly, yes. Usually that's talking about things that the police are bringing to us, to our attention, to inform our principals and making sure that we're aware of what those things are. And then sometimes there are additional items that are discussed that might lead to changes, yes.
So all we need to know is that you're meeting.
That we have to approve that we met.
How often, I guess, is the meeting? A quarterly, every quarter, once a year?
There's one formal meeting a year
That's
that's
this?
documented here. And then there are also informal meetings in between then where the chief and the superintendent will speak, or the principals will talk to the SROs, or there might be conversations as specific issues come up. We might speak to the lieutenant. And so there are various conversations that take place throughout the year between the meeting, but this is our formal meeting to meet the state requirement, which is why it is recognized by the Board of Education tonight.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Ms. Hendry?
I have a couple of questions. I had asked a couple of meetings ago when I realized that our paraprofessionals make just over $16,000 a year. And I did some research, and the average wage for a paraprofessional in New Jersey is $32,480. Is that a 40-hour work week? Is that like, how is that broken down? Is it kind of like the bus drivers where it's only like segmented for just a couple of hours here and there? My other question is, why can't we just add what the current bus drivers are doing to their pensions? Like, why are they getting shortchanged? And the other question before you begin, because it's an agenda item, the piece of property that you guys sold for $230,000, I think you have the address wrong. I think it's 1125, not 1117.
It's definitely 11:25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not 1117.
Mr. Sherman, you know about that? The first question?
The first question was related to the paras and their hours.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, they only make $16,000. Like I said, that doesn't even qualify somebody for a one-bedroom apartment in this area.
So I'll roughly tell you, they work a little over 6 hours a day. The contracted paras work a little bit over 6 hours a day for around 180, I forget exactly what the number of days
So they're
are.
only contracted for the school. They're not contracted for like the whole.
So they're
entire-
10-month employees that work a little over 30 hours a week during the time that they're working.
Okay.
And then the one-to-one paras that are hourly paras, then they work a little less than 30 hours a week.
Okay, and then how this awesome woman was saying that anything over she has to write on the slip, but yet it doesn't go towards her pension. Like, how is that possible?
I think that's what that was her point, was we are correcting that tonight. And that is why it's important for them to document what hours they're actually working and then have their contract reflect that, so that therefore it does end up being pensionable for them.
Would it be retroactive?
That's retroactive.
They've been getting paid all along, they're writing it on the timesheet, they'll get paid, it's just the pension doesn't get retroactive, no, back to the beginning of the year. It would be as of the effective date of the agenda tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir, back.
Hi, George Schwartz from the area. I'd like to comment on the guy's question before about the quarter-hour business. Really what that comes down to, I'm a bus driver, several other bus drivers here also. What that comes down to is, and I'm assuming that the school board is aware of the shortage of drivers and the many, many, many other issues that the school drivers are facing right now. Okay, I'm assuming you do. Where this quarter-hour comes from is we're all doing double work now. There are so few of us, we're all doing double work. we take a group of kids, our regular kids from the high school, and then we've got to go pick up somebody else's kid in the high school. Well, that backs up the next one, which would be Mullen, Fleming, the middle school. Well, then in turn, and then we're covering some picking up stops along the way of people who maybe other buses couldn't get for the middle school. So now we're about half an hour behind, okay? And then we switch over to the elementary school. Well, there again, we're covering extra schools. And then we go into the pre-K, we're falling behind. There's road construction everywhere right now. Traffic is just, well, if you live here, you know the traffic, okay? What I'd like to know is the school board aware of all this? And if so, what is your plan, you know, and back on the salary business, okay? The $16,000, that is for contracted drivers. Other drivers right now are non-contracted drivers, which means they're not for a benefit package. They're being paid $30 an hour. Our peers are being paid $30 an hour. We have people that have been here for 25 and 30 years that are making less now than somebody's been here for 25 minutes. If you can imagine such a thing. There are a lot of issues here that apparently you guys aren't really aware of. Or if you the right people to listen to them, if you meet with us and talk to us about it, maybe we can work it out.
We do have a meeting scheduled, I believe, for November 7th with representatives from your union. Hopefully after that, we'll have some better answers for the drivers. We do know there's a major driver shortage here. I myself, I own a transportation company. You cannot get anybody who wants to come in and or stay. And when you get them, you got to try to keep them. And in our town, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the drivers happy.
Okay. And there are other issues along the way too. Or do you have any response to any of that?
I can't answer that at that time right now, sir. I'd rather have the meeting with your representatives and then we'll have better answers for you. I do thank you for your comments. I do appreciate it. Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Janet Monitzer Ariel. Thing that the woman back here brought up about us pink slipping our time and why are not we being compensated in our pension for that, that's a separate issue from that 15 minutes is going to get added onto the contract. Transportation department uses a computer system that maps out the run in the beginning, and then we go in August and we pick our run. Then they start adding kids, okay? Because nothing stays the same from your first time you pick up that paper. So, and then it's like, how are you going to get from here to there, whatever? You're trying to make the flow, and always, or I should say, most of the time, you're going to go over that, whatever they said that it's going to be, okay? So that's where they add that time into your contract, and now you're being paid towards your pension. But all this additional time, you know, we do school trips, whatever, or when, like Barb was saying, you're going over your time because you're willing to take that extra, you know, go pick up those kids because they're bus drivers out or whatever. Like this morning, there was a Timber Creek kid walking down the street after I left Lily, and I just pulled to the side of the road and I said, "Where are you going? What school?" And he said, "Timber Creek." And I'm like, "Well, hop in, I'll take it." You know, he was more than happy because he had a nice long walk. But we do that all the time. Like we'll see kids standing on the corner, and if we have room, we'll put them in our bus. You know, we don't want them standing out there. I've been picking up a stop down in Loch Lomond because I drive the short bus now, but I still have 24 seats and I have 5 kids on my run. So I pick up this one spot so they don't have to stand out there till the next bus loops back around. You know what I mean? So that is what, that's the time that we're actually working for the school, not extra trips and not extra, you know, doodads. We're actually working to pick these kids up because there's not enough drivers. And that's what I think the woman back there was saying, that should be included in our pension because it's not extra, like, you know, we just signed them for it, you know. Like school late runs, like we have late runs, you know, sports runs, the activities buses at 4 o'clock. We don't have, a lot of them are on buses that our substitutes do. According to contract, the subs can't do extra work, okay? But if we don't have enough regular drivers, the subs are doing it, and they're getting $30 an hour. I've been here almost 22 years. I'm just at 2283, okay? Somebody that's learning how to be a bus driver and is being an aide, he's not getting paid the aide's rate, he's getting paid the driver's rate while he's being an aide, and then he goes out and trains. So how the heck fair is that to us drivers that, you know, we're driving the bus, we have the responsibility of the kids, and you've got people that are just learning to drive it. But we have one driver here tonight, she's been here 40 years. 40
years.
She doesn't even make that. She doesn't even make that. So this is what we're saying, like, I know, I understand the situation that the country's in with the lack of drivers, but we can't keep jumping, you know. The last I remember it was 18, then it was 19, then it was 22, then it was 25. Now it's 30, and we're jumping to try to compete with other independent and all that. But you can't leave the people that have been here with longevity in the, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's just not, we gotta work something out.
And I agree. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do tonight.
I know,
Hopefully, November 7th
But with November 7th,
would be
you're
a lot.
meeting with the executive board. Does not, does not drive.
So,
We need a meeting with the drivers.
sure. So here's what I'm saying. So for tonight, we appreciate any and all comments. It's a public meeting. We open it up for 2 sessions of public comment.
Right.
What you say tonight, I think will certainly educate and inform the board as we move forward towards November 7th. Your executive board represents you. We always appreciate hearing from anybody about concerns that you've had. And I think that will inform us as we move
We
forward.
understand that, you know, we are, you know, the support staff is a huge, you know, it's a huge part of the school system. And the drivers, even though we're not special or whatever, our department is in a certain way because we're not salaried, we're hourly. So that's always like a little confusing to everybody when they're trying to divvy out the raise that the board gives you when we negotiate. Okay, so it's even that, like, I know some of the other support staff people feel like, you know, well, you think you're better than us? No, we don't. We don't feel we're better than you, but we do need to have a CDL, which comes with a lot of responsibility. We have the children's, besides the money to buy that, you know, to pay for that all the time. Your physicals you have to do, your certifications you have to do, your fingerprints, your yada, yada, yada. We're driving children's lives around, rain, snow, sleet, hail, whatever. You know, that's different than sitting in, you know, the secretaries and I'm not saying anything like that.
We
It's
totally
just-
understand.
Right.
We do, and you know, like I said, we appreciate the perspective. I think there's things that we weren't aware of that was brought up.
And the passion that you're bringing in front of us today. I mean, obviously, like I said, there's nothing to be
I mean,
done
we're
today.
dedicated.
But we're listening.
Yeah, we-
And we're burned out and they're making more money than us.
We are listening. Hopefully, we will have some better answers after the 7th meeting, but I do, we appreciate it. We are listening. Thank you. All right, this time we're going to move on to report of solicitor. Mr. Long?
I just have my items from executive session and nothing further this time.
Report of superintendent, Mr. Trove.
This is where I shift to my assistant superintendent role for tonight and the presentation. This is the first year in 3 years that we're able to actually report on new standardized test results. And I know someone said, how long is your presentation going to be? I've got a reputation for talking a little bit loud. I can make it about 30 seconds and I can say COVID happened and we could be done, but I won't do that. I'll move through as quickly as I can. And that's at least a partial answer to some of the things that are going on. So just to give you an idea of what we have going on, there is always, and our curriculum committee, I think, has the pleasure monthly of getting updates with what we're doing curriculum-wise. You know, tonight we talked a little bit about the preschool program that we've added. We've got a number of ELA initiatives going on where there's some training to strengthen our teachers. We don't have new curriculum in ELA, but we are trying to strengthen what we're doing there. Math, where middle school's in year 2, elementary school is in the first official year of adoption of new materials and new curriculum for for those age groups. We also have 6th through 8th grade had to get updated with some of their materials to line up with new standards that the state of New Jersey put out. So we've got a lot going on in middle school social studies. There's been a lot of attention to health and physical education, and we've got regular staff development going on. We're still making sure that we're supporting staff in making some of the adjustments and helping students adjust to life after the pandemic, and much has been made of the trauma that they experienced, and really all of us experienced as a result of that. And we've been doing some things to try to make sure that we address social, emotional, and behavior expectations of students. So there's a lot going on. And in the midst of that, we're also making sure that we're preparing students for our statewide assessment program. So last year marked the 6th administration after a couple of year hiatus of the NJSLA, the New Jersey State Student Learning Assessments. And those are some battery tests for the first time since 2019. We gave those for students in grades 3 through 8 in ELA and math. And of course, some 8th graders took the Algebra 1 assessment, which is actually a high school assessment for their advanced coursework that they're taking. And then we also took grades 5 and 8. There's a gap there, took the science assessment. So just a couple things we look at, and I can tell you there's some challenges with doing some of this analysis right now. We've got a 2-year gap, so it makes it a little bit harder for us to look at some of our progress. Even though that's there a little bit. And then we've also got some issues with that third bullet of looking at relative performance. How do we do to others? We're really only able to look at that one measure, which is the state average. We're not able to get much of an idea of what's going on, but we are really able to look at some of our proficiency. How are we doing against the standard? So there's 5 levels for our students in ELA and math. There's only 4 in science. And the top 2 levels, levels 4 and level 5, are what they consider proficient or passing. So this gives you a little bit idea. I know that the print is going to be small on this and you're not going to be able to see it. I know the board has hard copies of this, and then we will be posting this on the district website tomorrow so that everyone can have access to that. But what you can see here, the colors are important on each of these. I'm going to go through them quite quickly. You have the yellow, which is the state average, and then you've got the red or maroon, that is the district average, and then you have each of the school buildings. So you can see 3rd grade ELA, we were a little bit below the state average. We did have 2 buildings, Gloucester Township and Eden Valley, that were over. You look 4th and 5th grade, we started to dip off a little bit from that, and more significantly below the state average. We did have Gloucester Township Elementary meeting that. Grade 5 ELA, back somewhere in the middle between those first 2, and again had a couple schools choose in Glendora that were at or better than the state average in ELA. Middle school, you can see again, a bit below the state average. Grade 7, a little bit closer, but below. And then grade 8, we had Lewis School did quite well, but we were, as a district, were quite a bit below the state average. So that's a bit of what that theme is when you start putting us all across the district, being a little bit below this, below the state average. I'll address that a little bit more in some of the coming slides. Grade 3 math, again, you see that same idea, yellow being the state average, maroon being the district average. You can see we had a number of buildings that did beat that state average, but most of them being below that. 4th grade, again, probably some that are close, but nobody meeting the state average. 5th grade, same situation, and the district being, fairly significantly below the state average. 6th grade math, a little bit in between there, a little bit below. 7th grade, a little bit further below the state average. In 8th grade, further off. And then this is where we get into 8th grade's a little bit tricky because somewhat depends how many students are taking Algebra 1. And you can see for algebra, we significantly surpassed the state, in part before we pat ourselves too much on the back. These numbers are a little bit below where we've been in the past, and the state average includes freshmen who had been the 8th grade students the year before that are taking Algebra 1. So it's our top 8th grade students versus the general students across the state with that algebra. But we did extremely well, and it's certainly a high-performing area for us, an area that we're proud of with our students and teachers. So that gives you a little bit of overview where we were. You can see generally that theme was below the state average. And then you can also see here, these are some of our trend lines. You can see that we had started in grades 3 to 5 in ELA. Back in the first year of testing in 2015, we were a bit below the state average. We very much closed that gap those last 2 years. And then unfortunately, as we rebounded from COVID, we didn't rebound as well as we wanted, and that gap widened a little bit. And so here, my headline that I have there is kind of our need to regain the growth, where we had some isolated success as a district. We did see scores drop a little bit as a result of the last couple of years, some of the disruptive learning and other aspects of COVID. Grades 6 to 8, again, very similar in ELA. We had a huge gap back in 2015. We closed that significantly. It's widened a little bit, not as much as maybe it did in the younger grades, but it did widen a little bit in grades 6 to 8. But again, you can see the state averages are going down significantly, and ours are as well. And then this is when you add all grades 3 to 8 together and show all of those, and you can see we were these bottom 3 lines here. Were the district back in 2015, we were significantly below the state average in all 3 of those areas, grades 3 to 5, grades 6 to 8, combining all of them. We closed that significantly. We were right up there next to the state, and then that gap widened a bit. Again, not quite as wide as it was in 2015, but widened again. And math, again, very similar. You can see we closed that gap significantly and steadily, and now it's widened a little bit again in grades 3 through 5. Grades 6 to 8, the gap basically stayed about the same from where we had narrowed it. So that was one of our better areas as far as that relative piece, that third piece of how do we compare to others. We basically stayed right in line with where we were with the rest of the state in grades 6 to 8. There was a significant drop in both the state and the district. So we've got some work to do. We're looking to regain that growth. We've got a number of things planned to do that. And again, you can see that here where we have significantly closed those gaps, and now they it's partially widened again. Again, these numbers are very small looking from afar, but what you can see is COVID and testing over the last year, all of our subgroups were hit pretty significantly. Those gaps were pretty consistent across the way, ranging from 17.6, which actually our female students dropped the most. And some of what you saw were the people that achieved the best pre-pandemic seemed to get hit the worst, and possibly that's because they had more to lose because they had a higher pass rate, so they had farther to fall. So females hit a little bit harder, and ironically, students, usually we talk about students with economic disadvantages struggling the most. It actually dropped more, and they had further to fall, but the scores dropped more actually for non-economically disadvantaged students. But otherwise, we were largely in that 17% range to around 10%. Subgroups. Math, very similar. The band was a little bit smaller, although we did have one of our smaller subgroups drop pretty significantly. And our Asian subgroup, which has been our highest performing subgroup, still is our highest performing subgroup, but they had dropped the most. You can see pretty significant drops across the board. Science. This was only the second time science was given. The first time scores weren't even given out in time to report publicly. It was late in the year. That was essentially a bit of a pilot year. So this was the first full year of testing. We've got some work to do. We certainly were fairly significantly below state averages in both 5th grade and 8th grade. And again, subgroups, we don't have much to compare to there, but you can see that there were some significant gaps there between some of our subgroups that we are going to continue to try to address. Parent refusals, I used to have a big chart on this, and I was like, this isn't really necessary at this point, because last year there were, out of testing, I believe it's about 4,500 students that we test, and we had 7 parent refusals with that. So virtually 100% of our students did participate in testing, which is a huge increase from when you went back to about 95% in 2015. So key reports we use. This is what they call an evidence statement analysis. So these have already been shared with staff back in October. I'll mention that again in just a moment. But teachers have had an opportunity to look at this. They'll continue to look at these. And what this does is it starts identifying standards, and these evidence statements are places where the developers of the standards talk about what achievement of the standard looks like. And so you're able to go back and look at that, and then teachers and district administrators are able to look, identify areas of focus where maybe our students struggle more than we would have, bigger gaps than compared to the state than in other areas, and then we can make those areas of focus for the year. And these are some reports that we had used when we started closing those gaps a few years ago, and we're going to continue and resume using those. Other areas I'm required to report out on, access for Ls. This is a much smaller group of students. These are for our ESL students. They're required to take this. It's also a computer-based test that they take the spring of each year, and they get a score from 1 to 6. And just to let you know, this is a growing area for us. In the past decade, we've seen our enrollment increase double of ELLs, and so it's still a relatively small group for us compared to some neighboring districts, but it is a growing and emerging area for us. So you can see here, it's numbers all over the place, but essentially when you go to the bottom, we start looking at these students that I believe it's when they get to 5 that they exit the program. And so one of the problems with looking at these scores are students who start performing very well on Access for Ls no longer get tested at Access for Ls. So this is largely looking at students that are typically newer to the country, newer to learning English, and we progress them through. So you can see that our numbers in this one were quite similar to what they were 2 years ago. Most of them 2 or 3 percentage points differences when you look at the students that were 4 and above this description. Dynamic learning maps, an even smaller subgroup of students. These are students with special needs who are unable to take and through their IEP, through the process of working through that with the child study team and the parents, it's determined that the NJSLA is totally inappropriate for them. And so they have an alternate assessment that they use that's individual to them, has to do with them meeting performance targets that are set for them through their IEP, and those are reported out. We don't have enough students that take it. There needs to be 20 in a particular area to report the results. So we have 16 ELA students, 12 math students, and 6 science students in the whole district. So I don't have reports to share on or scores to show on that. What they do basically say, are they emerging? Are they approaching their targets? Are they at target? Or do they have an advanced understanding of the targets that have been set? Action plans, we've already started doing some of this. Data's been shared with teachers. We're going to continue to share more of that. It's been shared with administrators. We had data day back October 7th, where staff looked at the data, responded with some of their initial responses to that. We utilized PLCs throughout the year that staff work, set goals, monitor how students are doing within those. We have grade level department meetings. We have the elementary math changes. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, the teachers that piloted the new math materials last year, their students tend to do a little bit better than the rest of the schools, still maybe not as good as we would like, but they did tend to outperform the students that were using the older materials. And I know a lot of teachers identified that when they filled out the survey that we took, that they felt like some of the old materials really did prepare students as well for the math as it should, and they were really looking forward to using the materials to hopefully get some better results there. I know when you start looking at some of those subgroup gaps, there is been talk of a district goal related to that. And so I know the district goal board is still working on finalizing those goals. Those are some things that we have. We'll be breaking down some of the data further. We've got some administrators are working through to look at some of that data closely. And then we also have the continued articulation within buildings, within the district, and also with Black perspective. These are some of the resources that are for parents. There's some new things. There's a parent portal this year where they can get in addition to what we mailed home to them, they can go online, see how their students have done over time. And there's additional resources for them to learn more about the test and things that are available. That's all I have. Any questions from the board? I talk fast.
Go ahead.
Try.
I just had one statement, but one question. Were they giving us what the state standards are? If everyone else went through COVID as well, why are we so much lower?
I don't have a perfect answer for that. That's where I talk about it's a little bit difficult to have some of the comparison data. One of the things I'll be looking forward to seeing is how the rest of South Jersey did. Traditionally, North Jersey has outperformed South Jersey. We were extremely proud. And I think I mentioned earlier when we talked about Glendora, Glendora School, I argued, had the best scores in essentially South Jersey, but especially in Camden County. I argued the same thing for C.W. Lewis School 3 years ago. So typically, our scores were outperforming most of the neighboring schools in the area. We don't know what their scores were right now. All we know is state aggregate scores. So we did fall away from the state. We'll be looking to get a little bit more perspective when the rest of that comes out. It's a concern to me. Part of my message to staff is we saw tremendous growth in the past. We're going to do it again. And two, we need to have the appropriate level of urgency. Not particularly thrilled with the scores, but it is hard to get the full perspective of all of that. So we need to dig in and get them back to where we need them to be. We want the appropriate level of urgency. We certainly don't want to panic, and we don't want to overestimate how negative or positive the scores would be. It's hard to take
You
a
just
real
never want to see
positive look at
scores
them.
go down, but I'd be curious to see what we're doing to support staff and kids to regain that growth. You know,
That's a little bit of what I try to talk about very quickly. We're looking probably in a reading and ELA. One of the things that we did before and we feel like we need to do again is go back to some of what we're doing with writing. It's one of the areas that is one of the most difficult areas to teach. So I know there's some things on the agenda tonight, some people that are going out to some training on some of the writing things that we've done before. They're going to come back and turnkey some of that. I know Dr. Sino has some things planned for writing. Math, we talked about EL and math. We're primarily focused on making sure that we understand and are implementing the program that we're using in elementary. It's new to us, so we're trying to utilize that really well. We know it aligns very well to the standards and what's expected. And like I mentioned earlier, the teachers who used that did fairly well last year. We're hoping usually you see a bump in the second year where scores go up a lot more. So about half of our teachers used it. It was a pretty extended pilot last year. And so we're hoping their scores go up even more. And then they did better than the other, those students did better than students using our old program. And we're hoping those classrooms move up as well. So we're hoping we'll see a significant bump this year. And, we're working very hard to do that.
When do you expect the local scores to come in?
I'm not sure exactly. I haven't gone back to look. Usually I have to kind of figure those out for myself based on some reports that they give us some preliminary results to. So I can't say, oh, here's how Washington Township did and so forth until later in the spring. But I get some access to that a little bit sooner. That at least lets me start breaking that down and looking at it a little bit with our administrative team as well as.
So you can't wait for this presentation until you take a look at local scores? This
Yeah,
has to be done.
we have 60 days from when we get the scores to make this presentation. And then the others, we haven't gotten, the other scores where I get those from are federal accountability data that comes out for ESSA. And so that gets released. We get our scores, we get a chance to look at them and make sure they're accurate and appeal them to the state before they get released publicly. So there's like a period there, but I can also see the whole county when I'm looking at ours. And so that's where I start doing some of that, but I can't share any of their data. It's embargoed still.
And you'll update us once you take a look at that?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to make 900 pretty graphs, but thank you. They were lovely graphs.
Bye.
So there's a lot of variability between the schools. So for instance, ELA grade 5 had a 26% gap between the top school and the lowest performing school. In math, I think it was grade 5, Lily to Glendora had a 37-point difference. That's a really wide swing. What is contributing to the variability between schools in terms of performance?
There's many things that contribute to that variability. So you have You have everything from the socioeconomic status of students, often translates to, we know that historical trends are not good for students that have come from lower socioeconomic status. And so you have some variability between grade levels and buildings, you have some of the larger buildings, you tend to have sometimes more teachers involved there, and so you sometimes have a regression to the mean, if you will, than when you only have one. Those smaller groups, you'll sometimes see from grade to grade there, you have some variability. And then also some of the things I've tracked over time, you've got the experience of the teacher. And so I know when we surveyed the teachers, you had some of them say, this was my first year ever doing this, I expect to be a lot better next year. So you had some teachers themselves stating, you know, I had a lot to learn last year and I was my first time through it and I'm going to do better this year. And so there's frequently, I've been able to track that over time. You know, the experience level of the teacher matters. And so those are some of, there's just that, those variables, those are like the three that pop into my head right away. And there's probably an infinite number of other variables as well. And that's part of what makes looking at this data always challenging. Is it's complex. People are complex, and you know what goes into it is complex. And if we had an easy answer, you know, we have 100% pass rate, you know, next year. But it's a challenge for everybody.
So thank you for that. I kind of want to get a little bit. We don't have to do it tonight, I guess, but want to understand a little bit more about how you systematize the various different programs that you implement. And just want to understand how consistently they are adopted at your various schools.
That's a little bit, I know there's some things on there. One of the ways that we try to do that is for the implementation specialists, but it is tough. We got 8 buildings for elementary and 3 in the middle school, and each of those areas has one supervisor that's trying to bounce around with that, and then you've got the building principals that we try to bring up to speed, but they've got a lot that they're doing as well. So it has been an area of focus for us this year is just fidelity to the programs and making sure that we're using the materials that the curriculum committees and the teachers really vet, and then had the board approve that we're using those with fidelity is definitely an area of emphasis for this year.
Speaking about new curriculum, were you able to, or are you able to, from this data, to see the difference between students that trialed the Eureka versus the students that didn't? Are you able to see a control versus experiment?
It was about 3% better in the Eureka group.
In the Eureka group.
Yes. And again, you look through that and sometimes that's difficult to see. Some of those teachers, it was off the charts. And so sometimes that vary a little bit which schools had more pilot teachers in that. And so there was some variability with that as well. So it wasn't necessarily something I put in there and was trumpeting too loud because I'm not exactly sure what it shows, but it was encouraging to see, you know, that it looked as if they certainly were doing a little bit better and hopefully significantly better.
We have really, you touched on this, we have consistent variability between student subgroups. We've got a pretty consistent 14 to 15% difference between girls and boys. In ELA, there's consistent double-digit differences between Hispanic and Black students versus the top student subgroups. We've got wide-ranging differences between students that are economically disadvantaged. What are the kinds of programs that are targeted to resolve some of those that we have?
So, is that all? I might be up here all night now trying to answer all those things. I'll try to give as quick an answer as I can to some of that. So starting from the program perspective, one of the things that you look at with the programs that you have is making sure that they are representative. So I know, for example, in elementary, we use Wisdom in grades 3 to 5. And it has both, you know, authors and is a very diverse set of reading materials that are in there. So that's one way to try to make sure that all of these groups are represented, that students have someone that they can connect to and who they're reading, who the authors are that they're reading, and all of those pieces. We do quite a bit of training, and I know we talked a little bit about trying to systematize that a little bit better, but we do quite a bit of training. We've been a longtime member of the network, New Jersey Network, to close the achievement gap. And so we have sent teachers and administrators to those trainings. They'll come back and turnkey those. I know I've sat in faculty meetings where those trainings are going on. So we've had a number of book clubs dealing with issues from restorative practices and some of those things to try to address some of the disproportionality that's not even represented here in like discipline data. So there's a number of things that we do with that. And then I've also, you break some of that down and you do see that there's a disproportionality as well in the economic status of students. And so our students of color are disproportionately students of reduced lunch. So that at least partially explains that. But then when you dig deeper and you separate those two, there are still gaps even when you look at non-economically disadvantaged students of color compared to their peers, there are still some gaps. So there is some, some variation within that. We are trying to address those issues as best we can, and we're continuing to do that work. So that's about 3 things there.
Yeah. Do we have anything specifically for economically disadvantaged students, and how do their parents or guardians, whomever are taking care of them, know about these programs to reinforce them?
Which programs?
Students, any programs targeting economically disadvantaged students.
So we don't specifically address economically disadvantaged students, but what we do have is ESSA. We identify the schools that are there's a higher density. So essentially, as a district, we've seen that number grow up. We're a little bit over. We're about 41 to 42% of our students now across the district are in free and reduced lunch. And so our schools traditionally that have been 40 or higher are what we call school-wide Title I schools. They get additional federal funding. They're able to have advisory committees that make plans, and then they have additional money to target what they identify their needs to be. Many of them use it. You see them on, some of those are being approved tonight as well on the agenda for after-school tutors, after-school programs to help with, with some of those areas. So that's primarily after-school and summer work that we've done for some of those students in the Title I buildings to try to make sure that students are struggling to get the extra help they need.
In science, there's a big drop there. How much do you think the switch from period to block scheduling way back whenever it was is a contributing factor to the lower science scores?
I don't know if I have any way of knowing that. I think the biggest challenge that we're going to have to take a close look at, and I talked with Mr. Mason about it, working with the teachers. Some of what we're really going to have to do is audit what we're doing with students in class against the sort of things that I don't want to say that the test is asking them to do, but that's part of it, because the test is based on the next generation science standards, which are very much about having students do science rather than learn about science, even though those things are somewhat synonymous. And so I think that's part of what we have to look at, is many of the questions are quite challenging. You can see that as the state didn't do very well. And if you go look at some of the sample questions, you'll see that they're extremely challenging. You might have a hard time answering a lot of those, and because it might ask a student to set up an experiment to determine to test some sort of scientific phenomena. And so we need to make sure that we're not just looking at phenomena, reading about it, researching it, seeing demonstrations. We need to make sure that we have students actually doing those higher level thinking skills required of the next gen science standards, of actually looking at two things and possibly developing an experiment of their own that they're trying in the lab. So those are some things that we're going to have to look at trying to shift to in the years to come.
I swear this is the last question. Thank you. But outside of standardized testing, what else can we do to evaluate student performance?
Again, lots of things, so the teachers are looking at their performance on assessments, day-to-day assessments in the classroom.
Is any of that like
unit assessments
to be able to look at it from a district-wide level?
Those are some things like, for example, science does have benchmark assessments that they give in middle school science. So we have those to look at. Social studies as well has assessments that they've developed in their curriculum. We're making some shifts within that curriculum. So I know one of the things that Dr. Christo is doing, there, which social studies isn't tested, but we do have those avenues. In math and ELA, we have the STAR assessments that we give 3 times a year. And so we utilize those as well and encourage staff. We share those results with them. Those are available. We use those to identify students who are making progress and identify them for intervention. And then also use that for some progress monitoring as well with them to see what kind of, how they're doing.
So it's more at the individualized student level. All right, that was my last question. I do have one comment, though. Mr. Tro alluded to a district goal that he put forward through the curriculum committee. So I have a draft of it here. I'm happy to give it to everybody on the board here. But I think that this is of really paramount importance to get this student achievement goal on the books as a board. This is kind of why we're here, is for student achievement. We don't actually have a district goal right now addressing student achievement. I think by those numbers, we can see that we need one. So I'll pass that along, but I would love the support of pursuing that at our next meeting.
Can you email that to the board?
Will do.
Thank you. Anybody else, any questions for Mr. Charles with his portion? We're gonna do during public comment, okay? Mr. Charles, take a seat. Like, you're out, your second item on that.
Do you need a glass of water? That was great.
I sat back down and I might have to stand back up. We did have one more thing on the agenda related to recognition. And at this time, I'd ask Mr. Lessman, the principal at Gloucester Township Elementary School, to come forward, as well as Lindsay McEnroe, I think, who is here on behalf of the Blackwood Kiwanis. I did get it eventually.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jacob Westman. I'm the principal of Gloucester Township Elementary School. Also joined by my EPC president, Gail Scott, and my head teacher, Natalie Franco. I've always been impressed since coming to Gloucester Township with just the support of the community, the support of the school, and of everybody. And so at Gloucester Township Elementary, we are blessed to also have a working relationship with our Kiwanis Club, who has donated a sum of money to the school specifically so that we can do some upgrades to our playground, blacktop area, recess area, so that we can really kind of provide some fun activities for the students. So I want to bring up our members of the Kiwanis Club. Okay.
So my name is Michelle Selfridge. This is Lindsay McEnroe, and this is Denise Wolf. She is the president of our Kiwanis Club. We're the Kiwanis Club of Gloucester Township, and our goal is to, as it is internationally, is to help one community, one child at a time. So Lindsay identified a way to help the kids in Gloucester Township Elementary School by providing some fun stuff for their recess. And that's basically why we are donating $2,000 to Gloucester Township Elementary School to purchase some of those fun toys. And if anybody is interested in becoming a member, we are always looking for members and happy to have you. Just go on GloucesterTownshipKiwanisClub.org and check us out. Okay, and I would love to just take the opportunity. I'm an educator myself, and there is no better school districts. It doesn't matter what the test scores say. We love our kids and we prepare them for the future. And that is what this board is doing. And all of you bus drivers and teachers, my hat's off to you.
We're back to the superintendent report, Mr. Trout.
So there are a few items that I would like to, I know we mentioned some of these in executive session. There are two employees that we would like to add that were not originally listed. One of those is under 6.6A. We have Renee Rafter. She's replacing employee 5709 as a special education teacher in autism at Union Valley, step 5 with a master's degree, $61,239 prorated, and effective 12/18/22 and/or completion of paperwork. And we also have a recommendation to add in 6.6F, which would be Joey Nickel Spadero as a one-to-one aide at Union Valley Elementary School. I'm sorry, 6.6B. I had it written in the right place there. My apologies, 6.6B. And then we have also under professional development, there's a correction. Maura McGarvey needed to withdraw her, we mentioned the writing training. She needed to withdraw to a family commitment, and they have asked to substitute another teacher from Glen Landing, Amy Mashinsky, in her place. So Maura McGarvey should be switched to Amy Mashinsky on 6.6E professional development. So with that, I ask for a consent resolution as amended for items 6.2 through 6.6L.
Moved as amended.
Second.
Any questions?
I do. On 6.6, all right, the E, the writing with spice. So they're teachers from different middle schools and then they're going to turnkey whatever they bring back. 6.6G, math elementary information specialist. I see there's 21. What exactly are they going to be doing?
It's a little bit of what I was referring to with one of the questions earlier. Those are individuals who, when we announced the committee had selected the new math curriculum, we don't have coaches anymore. So we talked about how do we make sure that everybody understands and is able to use the program. They adopted a year early and they agree to a 2-year cycle where they're going to teach it for a year, they're going to get trained, and then they support their colleagues throughout the year that they're doing it for the first year.
I didn't realize there was 21. That's why I.
It's quite a few. I mean, we're talking K to 5, so they still end up supporting quite a few individuals.
And then also on that, the after-school behavior intervention, what exactly is that? There's 4 from Mullen, or 5 Mullen, 3 Lewis, and 1 Glen Lane.
So the intent there is, one of the things that we talked about, also kind of made somewhat reference to, is restorative discipline and trying to do some things to help students out. So what these are teachers who are agreeing to stay after school for students who had some sort of disciplinary issue. And so when they stay after school with the students, they will be working with the students about what issue they had, how they might prevent having that issue again, and trying to provide that support for them. So it's kind of in addition to what would normally be a detention, also making a little bit of a piece where they're making a connection to teachers and getting some support and not just serving a consequence.
And then the after-school tutoring / parent involvement, are parents going to be involved with? Are they, that's what kind of threw me off.
Yeah, so what that is, with Title I, they have tutoring that they provide to students after school. That's the after-school tutoring piece. And then there's kind of a double piece to that. They also have money that's used for parent involvement. And so they do parent activities as well that aren't so much tutoring, but maybe it's educating parents on the curriculum that they're using. And so they're really sort of 2 separate things, but they're getting them approved to be able to do both.
And they're all contacted that they can all go to whatever they.
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, Ariel School does math nights and they get hundreds of students and parents to come back. And so a lot of those are like teachers that participate in those math or ELA nights with the parents and students.
All right. And then I also want to know if I can have a copy. I know it says there's a copy in the superintendent's office of the nursing services and the guidance and academic counseling. Is there anybody get a copy of that?
Yeah, that was requested, and I think Lori Cavallero will be sending that out tomorrow.
Sorry.
No, it's no problem.
That's okay. I didn't get a chance to send it. Laura will send it out tomorrow. Okay. All right. Thanks, Sharon.
You'll send it to everyone?
Yeah.
Because I had the same question.
All right. Thank you.
Both the nursing and the guidance, right?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one, please. On 6.6K, the terminations, it says employee number 3529, after school music program dropped. What does that mean? We are not having the program?
Well, that also lines up with what we talked about tonight. When we hired the full-time teachers for elementary school, that replaced the after-school.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, great.
And
Thank
then
you.
also that could be, yeah, that's it. There was some middle school things as well, so hopefully I answered that correctly.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have two. 6.4D, the meeting with the police chief, is that where the MOA is gone over?
Yes. I
Is
mean,
that a public document?
Yes, the MOA is a public document.
Also, 6.6J, referring back to the list for the bus drivers. Are these estimates of single runs? Or as some of the bus drivers were saying, sometimes they have double runs. Are these all single runs is my question.
At the beginning of route bidding, they're all single runs. We wouldn't have a, to my knowledge, we wouldn't have a double run at route bidding.
Okay, but this is the change from
the
bidding
change,
to now.
the change is not gonna double up a run. They might get paid extra for doing a double run because they're going over their time.
So this is single runs.
The route that's bid is still a single run, but they are
Got it.
still doing, in practice during the day, they are still doing double runs. If they go over the time, they will get paid for that time.
Right, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that these were single runs in
They
there.
are.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Santino? Yes. Mrs. Gill? Yes. Ms. Lipscomb? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Ms. Reese? Mrs.
Yes.
Reese? Ms. Smith? Yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes. We'll move on to report of business administrator.
So, would you like me to amend?
The address of the Glenlock School? Yes.
I would like to amend, thank you, Mrs. Hendry. I think maybe I was trying to sell what.
We're doing your amendment on the address of the Glenlock School.
We can't really hear you guys.
Oh, Janice, please speak up.
I would like to amend item 7.6C to read that the property address would be 1125 Black Horse Pike. And then I would like to ask for a consent vote on items 7.1 through item 7.7D.
So moved as amended.
Second.
Any questions? On roll call, please.
Mrs. Santino? Yes. Mrs. Gill? Yes. Ms. Lipscomb? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
No on check number 127562. Yes on the balance.
Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Ms. Smith? Yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Abstain on check number 127415. Yes on the balance.
Mr. Marks?
Yes. At this time, we'll move on to old business. Mr. Trout?
There is none. However, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Mr. Nicholas Morfeld, who was just approved as the new assistant principal at Lawrence County. Congratulations, welcome aboard, and hopefully we'll get your replacement in there quickly in fourth grade so that you can be unencumbered totally.
What school?
Loring Fleming, I'm sorry, Loring Fleming Elementary School. I did say, I probably didn't say it loud.
New business.
And there's no new business.
At this time, I'll open up for public comments. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara E. 17, I live at 21 Sinatra Drive. I'd like to address some situations with the bus drivers. I'm well aware that you stated that we can talk on November 4th when you have your meeting. It's imperative that whoever makes the meeting discussions gets the bus drivers to be able to be there. So you really can, obviously there were questions asked this evening and you didn't have the appropriate answer for them. So it's really important that you have bus drivers there.
Yeah, I was totally agree.
So it's important that you have bus drivers there, so you do have the actual answers that you're looking for. I do want to thank the board. It's really important. We, the bus drivers, do appreciate you looking out and offering to help us with our pay rate. There's some things that I guess people don't know. We have approximately 75 routes that we have taking children to and from school. We have 45 contracted, approximately 45 contracted bus drivers and 20 subs, okay, which gives us 65 people that are able to drive. That means there's 10 routes that are unattended, okay? 10 routes, you figure, it is, if it's 4 schools, 15, 5, 10, 15, well, we're looking at like a 60-hour deficit. We need to make up 60 routes. We need to make up 60 single routes. And we don't even have 60 drivers. So when we speak about overage, okay, when we all sign for our route when we want. School starts, we start our route. We're given new preschoolers, we're given new students that are coming in late, taking off students that aren't there. So the route changes. It constantly, not constantly, but at the beginning it changes. So our hours change. Not only do our hours change for the actual route that we signed for, but the fact that we're down 10 drivers, we have to make up those routes and those hours. The contracted drivers, we get paid if we go over, go over our hours. Sometimes you might be finished your route and still have a few minutes left and you do a run for them. No, we don't get paid for that. We only get paid if we go over what our contract states. So we don't get paid for everything we do, and for the majority of us, we don't mind helping out, but it's very hard doing that because there's just so many things that are actually hurting us. I'd like to read a couple things to you all so you understand where we're coming from. The money is really important to us. And really, I'm reading it because that way I don't say this, that, and the other thing. School bus drivers are required to hold a commercial driver's license, a CDL, with school bus and passenger endorsements, and are also required to meet federal standards for alcohol and drug testing. The standards include testing upon initial employment, followed by random tests. In addition, school bus drivers must undergo a physical examination every 2 years, a criminal background check upon initial employment, and at the end, and at the time of renewal of their CDL, and submit an annual driver's abstract for motor vehicle every year. This is everything that we have to do in order to be employed and have the CDL license. So we can't work as a bus driver if we don't have a CDL license and do all these things. There's other employees that are also under our umbrella for the association, and so they have to have the custodial, for instance. Some of them have the state certified Black Seal fireman's and broiler operation license. They get a stipend of $550 because they have to have that in order to work. We have to have our CDL in order to work. We get no stipend, none at all. The other thing is that traffic offenses. Drivers who are convicted of 2 or more serious traffic offenses in 3 years can have their CDL suspended. So having our CDL suspended means we now are not able to work and we're not able to make money. Not just with the school district, but in general. We can't do any type of driving where a CDL would be needed. And just to give you an example, if you do not have a CDL license and you're tailgating, and you get a ticket for tailgating, you can go on about your business and pay that fine. If we get a ticket for tailgating, we get double the points and the amount that you get. And you're only able to have 2 things before you get suspended. First suspension, I believe, is 30 days. The second suspension is 160 days, whatever it may be. Having a CDL license not only involves us working our business, but it involves us personally. Because you get a ticket, we get double what you get. So we have to now watch whatever, I mean, we all watch the way we drive anyway, but my point is that a CDL, it also requires more than just being able to drive a school bus with children in it. Reckless driving, an accident, these are all things that they consider serious. And we pay double what anybody else does. So now we have to watch what we do with our, how we approach and act with driving, which I know none of us want to get tickets. But the point is that we have to be doubly careful because of this. In order to get your CDL license, I don't know if anybody is aware of this, but we have to follow all these steps of getting a CDL. We have to complete a driver training. Driver training is approximately 20 hours, and the new 21 program, that's an additional 14 hours. We have to pass the general knowledge exam. We have to pass the road test. We have to pass a Class A vehicle, a Class B vehicle endorsement exams we have to. In order for us to be a bus driver, we have to go through a full process. So like, when I had to pass my test, I had to know everything under the hood of that bus in order for one of the steps for me to pass. So it's not just knowing how to drive, it's knowing everything about your bus, which is very important. We have children, once we get into work and we start working, then we decide to move on. Yes, they need somebody to cover this run. Oh, I need somebody to cover that run. We're all doing doubles. Some of us are doing triples. And what's happening is it's not just affecting us, it's affecting the students because everything goes downhill. We have to make 2 runs for high school. That makes us late for our middle school. We're now late for middle school. Then we have a double for middle school. Now we're even later. By the time we're able to pick our preschoolers up, they are a half hour to an hour late. And some of those preschoolers are on the bus for an hour in just traveling. So it's, like, we don't make what the average bus driver makes anymore. We start at $15.90 contracted. Okay, the reason the majority want to be contracted is because you get benefits. A benefit is something extra and above. I'm really sorry, my voice gets loud. I can't help that. I'm not yelling.
Please stay loud. We can hear you better.
I have that problem too.
So the benefit, so we make $15.90, you start at $15.90, and everybody's like, oh, well, you get insurance and you get 10 days holidays. Okay, but the bus driver that is not contracted, they make between $25 and $30 an hour. And the way we're so short, they're all making $30. And they're not making $30 after they hit their 25 hours. They're retroactive back to when they started, okay? I'm making 15, so to speak, $15.90 when we start because I'm getting benefits. I'm getting, life, our medical and everything. But that $10 difference between what a sub is making, what a contract driver is making, that $9–10 difference, that's what's paying our benefits. We're not getting an actual benefit, we're paying for it. And not only are you taking that money, that $9–10 difference, but then we're being charged weekly an amount to also pay for our benefits, which was never the case back whenever. But the other school districts around us, they're making $25 an hour. And not only are they making $25 an hour, but when they do trips, anything extra, anything other than what's on their contracts, they make $35 an hour. We don't get any of that. We're making below what minimum is going to. We do trips, we don't get anything extra for doing a trip other than getting paid for it, but we get paid what our contract states we get paid. I'm 3 years. The gentleman in the back is 6 years. He's only getting paid 30 cents more than me. We have, and I know we already went through this, 40 years. 40 years she's been here, $27 an hour. Oh, 27 and change because she drives a van, so she gets an extra 30 cents. So everybody isn't seeing the full circle of what's happening here with the bus drivers. Every bus driver company out there is short, but other than Gloucester Township, all other companies and school districts are willing to pay their drivers. They're willing to show them that they do mean something. Because if we're not here, how are all your students really, excuse me, going to get to and from school? And in the summertime, when you close the schools because it's so hot outside and the children can't be in the heat like that, I get it. But we drive some buses that have no air conditioning and we don't get sent home. We still have to drive the bus and the students home to make sure they get home. Or how about when it snows outside and you cancel school or you close school early? What happens then? No, we don't get to leave early. We have to stay and we have to drive in the snow. And we have to get those children home safely. So it really is all about the children, just like the teachers.
We're worth it.
We're not saying that other parts of our association that we're all in together, we're not saying they're not worth it. Everybody is worth it in their own way. But everybody is getting more than we are getting, and we're not, and like, you really need us, and you need our dedication, because we're all dedicated. You know, there's something in, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, right? But it says, you know, in our contract, take actions as may be necessary to carry out the mission of the school district in emergencies. Well, this is an emergency. And that's why I thanked you at the beginning, because you offered us $5. The people that are on the union, right?
Mandy, we can't talk about bargaining in public.
No, I'm not talking about bargaining.
No, I'm talking about that.
I'm not talking about bargaining at all. But the people that are, they aren't driving a bus. They have no idea what we do, what we need to do, what we do, how it affects us out of work. They do not know. And we don't have somebody from transportation on the board, but transportation has 40 people that can vote. So right now, we're at the bottom of the level. So everybody else in our association has more people to where they're able to vote their people in, which only makes sense. You know, I'm not going to deny it only makes sense, but we have no way of sticking up or backing up or explaining our situation. And, you know, to be quite honest, we've talked about leaving the association, but what good would that do us? We don't know what it would, and we don't really need to leave the association. I mean, we're all a district that works together. We just need to be seen differently and how we actually work and what we're worth and what we do. I mean, those students, we make sure we get them to school. Let me give you another little example here. When the kids are in school, say lunchroom, let's say the lunchroom, and a fight breaks out, teachers, principal, everybody right there to break the fight up. Is that correct? Can I say that's a fair statement to be made? Well, when we drive the kids home on the bus and there's a fight, there's nobody there to help us. We have to pull over and we have to handle the situation until we're able to either get the students back to the school, if there's somebody back at the school, or depending on how bad it is, if the police are able to come. But we have to handle those situations. We have to handle the students that are on the bus that are abrupt and loud and rude. And while the children that aren't acting that way are crying and holding their ears, and we have to make them feel it's okay, don't worry, it doesn't involve you. We have to do all this without screaming, without putting our foot down. We have to do this, the way things have to be done these days. But the point is that we are by ourselves. We don't have the help that the schools have, so to speak, right then and there. So it's just so, the $5 is great, but our subs get $25 to $30 an hour. Even if we get $5, the person making $15 when they walk in, that's $20. So that doesn't even bring us up to the 25 that everybody else is getting. Our high school is 25 and 35. Pine Hill is 25 and 30. Oh, and they all get insurance, and some of them get insurance for their family. We have to wait 3 years to be able to insure our family with us. So we're just not looked at fairly, and we're not looked at as, a major part of the district. Nobody does what we do. I can come in here, we had COVID, right? Well, we weren't driving, so what they do? We had to paint, we had to work on the grounds, we had to clean ceiling tiles, wash the bathrooms. Okay, well, we can do that because you don't need, we worked in the cafeteria, we can do all that because we can help out. But not one of those people can do our job because they do not have a CDL.
We hear you. And we look forward to sitting down and getting everything ironed out at some point.
Well, at some point, we can't keep waiting because you have people that.
As soon as possible. We have our meeting set as soon as possible.
We have people ready to leave. We have more people ready. We have people that are ready to leave.
Okay.
We have senior people that work with us that are like, look, it's not worth the aggravation. I'm just gonna do what I can do, take it, get my secondary and leave. We have new people that are saying, nobody wants to be contracted. I've been here, I'm going on my 4th year. There's only 2 people under me that have been contracted in 4 years.
They don't want.
Thank you.
They do not want to be contracted.
Because they want the 25.
They want the 25, we can't even keep people here.
Thank you,
what I mean? Like, we have to be able to show that Gloucester Township is the great place that it is.
Thank you, ma'am.
We need to show people out of here.
I have to move on, ma'am. I'm gonna circle back to you, but there are some other people with their hands up. Ms. Hendry? I'm gonna circle back to you.
Able to get the transportation, the bus driver, contractor drivers, even if it's 5 of them in this meeting. We need
Thank
to
you,
be
ma'am.
there.
We understand. Thank you. Ms. Hendry?
Hi, I asked, last meeting about IEPs and caseworkers and why they get switched around and, being notified and things like that. I still haven't gotten an update or response.
Mr. Tro, can you get that done now for me, please?
And that was one thing. And the other thing was, with the,
And CC me on that, please.
and with the question, with the state, assessments, how can you tell if a child is Hispanic or, a person of color? Like, is it by what they self-identify as? Because I can tell you, my 3 boys don't understand or realize that they're Hispanic. They would just say, I'm 3 little white kids.
So when parents register their children, they register their children, and that's one of the pieces of information that they give us at registration.
Okay, and so then the state gives you those breakdown, or you break it down?
The state gives us the breakdown based on what we report to them, which is based on what parents have classified their students as. So, right, in some cases, one of the things that has been a growing subgroup and that an area that is getting utilized more are students of multiple races, 2 or more races. So you'll see that group is a growing group amongst us because so many, so many families are biracial.
Oh, excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
It's with a heavy heart that I heard of Janice Gracia's departure from Gloucester Township. She is a phenomenal employee of the township, and it's going to be a huge void to fill her position. And I work as the membership chair for GTA, and I rely on you heavily with emails and things, and she is so quick to respond, and her professionalism and her dedication to this district was over and above. And I personally want to thank you for all your years here at Gloucester Township. Thank you. Do we have one more? Thank you.
Any other comments? We're going to move on to board member comments.
I have some stuff,
Yes, ma'am.
but I'm so busy taking notes. So I will start with the bus drivers. I am the Transportation Committee Chair. And we have had many meetings revolving around transportation, the problems there. We typically meet with the two supervisors and the rest of the committee, Mr. Bilodeau, Janice. And so some of the things that you're talking about, I'm very well aware of. Some of the things that you're talking about, I have no clue about. And some of the things you're talking about gave me an interesting perspective. So I want to thank you all for coming out and having a conversation with us. When I became the transportation chair, I put out a survey to all of the transportation people. A lot of people, I think, were maybe afraid to fill that out. They didn't think it was going to be anonymous. I promise you it was. If it comes from us, take our word for it, okay? I will find a way. I didn't know about this meeting happening, so I've been a little out of touch, and I'll explain that in a minute, but I didn't know about this meeting. If for some reason bus drivers cannot be there, I will find a way to open lines of communication between you guys, the drivers, and us. I'll find a way. I'll talk to Mr. Long. Absolutely. Some things our hands are tied on, and some things I can do, and I will unblur those lines through Mr. Long and figure it out. Thank you. My email address is on there. You guys can reach out to me anytime via email, like it. And if I don't respond to you, it's not because I didn't read your email, it's because we work. We're 9 that work as 1, if that makes sense. So if I don't respond to your email, maybe I'll just give you a thank you so you know I got it, but I might not reach out and give you a lot of details, but just know that we hear you, and moving forward, we'll try to do it a lot faster. And so in the 6 years I've been on the board, I have missed possibly 3 meetings until the past couple of months. And I always say that I represent the public, and I answer to the public, like you guys are my boss. So I have to tell you that my brother was put on hospice a couple months ago, and I have been driving back and forth to North Carolina visiting him. So which is why I missed some meetings. And we did have his memorial service over the past weekend. And I drove an RV, just so you know, 18 hours on Thursday night and 18 hours on Sunday between my husband and I. So up and down mountains, trying to stop that thing in traffic. I feel you. It's the first time I ever did it, and I feel you. It's
With 2 kids.
2 grown kids and 3 dogs, and it was tough. So I appreciate what you guys do. And Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, thank you so much for your perspective on a couple of things. Like, I think I knew things in the back of my mind, but until you said them out loud, I was like, wait, what? So thank you for that, for opening my eyes on a couple of things, and I appreciate that. And I don't tell you about the brother thing for sympathy because honestly, it's too soon, so please don't say anything. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's
Thank
it.
you. Any other comments?
I just want to say, I'm also on the transportation committee, and Jen has been the chair, and she's been a big voice. So we hear you, and like she said, our hands are tied on some things, but you did bring a different perspective. Some things, like Jen said, I'm gonna ditto on her. I didn't realize, like in the back of your head, you think it, but please know that we are here for you. And Jen has been a big voice. Elliot is also in transportation, and Mr. Mark. So we have been meeting. Please know that we do care. You do a wonderful job, and you're right. Without you, our kids would not get to school. So we do appreciate you, as well as all the other support staff. So we realize that what you said, you're no better than them, but
We're different.
you're different.
There's a uniqueness.
Yes.
We're the minority.
So, and we do realize that there is a shortage of bus drivers across the country, and we feel your pain, and we are trying to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd like to echo Linda's comments. I'm also on the transportation meeting, and we are constantly talking about, when we meet, we are always talking about what can we do to make this better. So my daughter goes to Ariel, and she gets picked up outside my house, and we have a wonderful bus driver. And on multiple occasions, we see exactly what happens in the morning, because we've got kids that go to Ann Mullen that are right down the street from us. And so we see them get picked up by our bus and then go around the neighborhood and then pick up my daughter. I mean, so it happens all the time. So I can tell you as a parent, I have so much love and respect for our bus drivers. My daughter went to Ann Mullen for preschool last year and had another wonderful bus driver. You are the first face our children see in the morning, and are the first representation of school that they ever see. And it's a magical thing to watch.
You need us happy.
What's that?
You need us happy.
Absolutely. I can tell you that the folks that are on your transportation committee are advocates for bus drivers. They absolutely are. You so eloquently brought up a number of different things today. I've taken a bunch of notes. I know that we're gonna have some conversations about this. I also wasn't aware that there was a meeting going on November 7th. So I'm really kind of curious as to the topics of that conversation. But just know that you have advocates, and your concerns do not fall on deaf ears. I know I can speak for certain others that are not in their heads, but so please don't stop reaching out to us. Please don't stop presenting your concerns. We want to hear them. We need to hear them. So I just want to thank you for coming forward tonight and talking them through them. I say a lot for the folks that don't come here often. I say a lot at these meetings that the way communities come together is by celebrating successes and collaborating on challenges. Clearly, we have challenges, and I, for one, am very welcoming of the collaboration and resolving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Marks, can I just add to mine?
Oh.
Can I have another chance? I'm sorry. You got me on sidetrack, like I knew what I wanted to say. And with the past couple of months of my life being extremely chaotic, Mr. Bilodeau has just supported me in trying to get agendas together for me. So he's not here, but I wanted to thank him for that. His staff that went over and above putting all this stuff together so I could take it with me. Mr. Tro, who went through this entire presentation for the board, had to then reiterate it to me and took the time to do that graciously. So I did want to thank the administration and Mr. Marks, who had to go out of his way to bring me stuff when I got back into town after one of my trips. So I really do appreciate, Janice was probably involved in a lot of that as well. Just making it smoother for me to be in touch with the board, although I wasn't here, I was still working. And it just made it a whole lot easier. So I appreciate all of those people involved in making my life a little easier over the past 4 months. Thank you, I'm done now.
Thank you. Any other comments? I want to touch on 2 issues. The first one, not an issue. It was awesome to see Star students here again in the building. Absolutely phenomenal. Get the children back out and recognize them. That really made me feel good with the recommendation that we brought that back. To the bus drivers, we hear you. You see the size of my ears? I hear you. I sit on the negotiation teams. I will be at the meeting on the 7th. We hear you. We know what our neighboring districts are doing. We know what they are paying. We know what independent bus companies are paying. We hear you. We need to have the time to sit down. We will have a couple hurdles to jump over, a couple obstacles, but I think we can work it out together. We hear you. We need you, pretty much. We need our family right.
Just during the meeting, and then if they want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
just come back.
So if anybody wants to talk after the meeting, I'll stay a few minutes.
It's not just the new people, it's the loyal people that have been with you for years and years and years. I think the older drivers are the ones that are getting really upset because we're doing.
We hear you. We understand. We hear you. We understand. I'm gonna stay after a few minutes. You want to talk?
I'm not saying they shouldn't get 25 or 30, they should. They absolutely
I'm gonna
should.
stay after a few minutes. You
Yeah.
want to talk to me on the side?
I'd like to
Absolutely.
chat too.
May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you, Bob. It's one of our clients.